Hello! So I wanted to do kind of like a mage ranking video for Wizardry Variants Daphne, based on the post-game of the Third Abyss, because I just finished that not too long ago. I beat Morgus. Previous I had beaten all the other post-game bosses, such as Seal Demon, Zero Corruption Gatekeeper, all the bounty targets. I did Old Castle Ruins, right? I did all that using a line that used 5 mages. Like, I've been using a 5-mage team, so I feel like I have pretty good insight about mages. I have a lot of experience using mages, so I feel like I can offer a pretty good perspective about like the mage class and like who's good, like which ones you should focus on developing. And yes, and we're also said, so there's gonna obviously be perspective from like post-game, especially post-game bosses, but also I'm gonna think about like take into consideration like how useful their inherits are, how hard they are to get, and you know, all those things. Just kind of nice. I'll explain as we go along, but let's just start. So at S tier I have just one character here, and that is Alice. This is probably a surprise to no one, but Alice is unquestionably the best spellcaster in the game. She starts as a priest, but can become a mage. She is water type. First thing most people will note about her is she has this ability called Agent of Heresy. And what this does is increase damage to enemies for everyone in the user's row if that row only has evil or neutral allies. So pretty much no one who's good aligned. So this is a lot easier to activate than you think, since you just have to make sure there's no one who's good aligned on that same row. In the row, and by row they mean like 1, 2, 3. Like, so if I have Alice on front row, so that means front row gets it. If I had Alice in the back row, just be your back row. So that's a 10% damage bonus. 10%, like I said, if they did 1,000 damage, it would do 1,100 instead. Pretty simple. Like, that adds up a lot over time. Super nice bonus. Helps pretty much. She just makes her team better just by, you know, ensuring there's no one good aligned on the same line. Pretty easy to activate that. Super great ability. The other thing that makes Alice good is Blessing of Agora, which gets the extra turns to buffs and debuffs. Like, if we go to like a training room, we can even show you. It starts at level 1. Like, at level 1 it's just 1 turn, but as you level it up it gets more turns. So Blessing of Agora, she'll start with a level 1, so and it's 1 extra turn, which is great. Being able to keep buffs and debuffs up for an extra turn is great. This also applies to like your mage buff, Mental Unity, like your self buff, which lets your mage magic spells do 50% more damage. So she can keep Mental Unity up longer than anyone else. And of course, if you want to use Alice dupes to level us up, it only takes 2 to go to level 3. It adds a second one. And again, you only need 2 Alice dupes to take this to level 3. And that's probably you should do with your first 2 Alice dupes. Going to level 5 takes quite a few more, but just going to level 3 get you to 2 extra moves, and then it's like said. And again, this is also a good inherit for other characters. So just one of the downsides, Alice, is that this is such a good inherit. However, you really only need 1 level on other characters, because that they get the extra turn at level 1, whereas they can't get a second extra turn until level 5, which requires total 9 Alice dupes. So it's almost never worth it to go beyond level 1 for anybody not named Alice. So the demand for inheritance isn't quite as high as it is for someone without like Adam, who we'll talk about later. But she will be a bit lower on discipline in the short term, but long term, like I said, you'll probably have a Blessing of Agora like on your spellcasters, maybe one on the main character. You'll have it at level 3, and then you can start using further Alice dupes for discipline. But she is just like the backbone of pretty much any team, but especially a mage-focused team. Like, Alice is irreplaceable because of those 2 abilities, Agent of Heresy, Blessing of Agora. And in addition, she has one other, just bonus move called Secret Art of Labadios. So this is light damage. This is a light damage spell, hits all enemies, also has an extra damage versus undead. So this is a nice gravy. It's light damage. Because she's a water mage, she also gets Lawmeagle, so she pretty much gets 2 types of AE damage. She can do Lawmeagle for water. She can also do Labadios for light damage. So the only downside, though, is she has to be in the middle of the back row to actually have access to this, so it does require a bit more specific line placing. And like I said, I wouldn't say is as good as the secret art as, like, say, Kathrina's, which we'll talk about later, but it is a nice just bonus on top of the other 2 amazing abilities she gets. Like, Alice unquestionably is the best spellcaster in the game. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think most people would agree with me on that one. So this brings us to A tier, where I have just 4 characters. So first up is Milana. I have Milana here at the top of the A tier because, mostly because of this ability called Mutual Interest. What Mutual Interest does is increase damage to enemies for a user, an ally in front or behind them if the ally is evil. So what this means is that it's kind of like Alice's ability, which is left to right, but this one's front to back instead of left to right. So it affects 2 characters. So let's say if my main character was evil, he's neutral right now, but if he was evil, he would get that 10% bonus from mutual interest, and so would Milana, but also it stacks with Alice's bonus. So if Milana's in the same row as Alice and she had the mutual interest active and also Ancient Heresy active, she'd get both those 10% bonuses, and because the way the stacks actually ends up being a 21% bonus. Likewise, I could put her up like either in front or behind Alice and give them both that 10% bonus. Like Alice would end up with a 21% damage bonus. So just super, super good that way. Getting that extra damage bonus is super valuable for a lot of reasons why you ranked Alice so highly. I do think Milana's probably the second best mage. The other thing that makes Milana's good is that fact that she's dark type. Dark type ended up being really meta in the Third Abyss just because of like some of the post game bosses like Morgus and Syl Demon, just because they do all these dark type damage. And dark mage takes less damage because of dark type thaumaturgy. Super nice. And of course, dark type means you don't have a penalty to cast in any types of spells. Like if you have like when you're elemental mage, like Kathrine, if you want to cast like a wind spell with Katharina, like Feru or Maferu, she casts this at a penalty. She will do less damage with a Maferu or a Feru compared to like any other like non-earth type mage, just because of the way the penalties work, because she's weak to wind type. But dark mages don't have that restriction. You can teach light type spells to dark mages. They don't have a restriction on casting that. The only downside is they don't learn a second type of magic spells. They only learn dark type spells, and naturally, unlike the 4 elemental types where they always learn like a secondary type. That is the one downside, and these ones are a bit harder to level up, but you can always you teach them like Ferromegal. You can do that. You can always use like skill scrolls and stuff to level these up again. A bit harder to find like actual ones. There have been a few events and stuff that do that, but that is the downside. But all the other things she brings, I put her as the second best mage in the game. And then as third, this one took me a while to decide because it's kind of close, but I have Katharina third, mostly because there's no real downside to developing Katharina. Her inherit is this Eye of Kashalm ability, which is not bad, but it's kind of a meh inherit. It's not a bad skill, but there's no real reason to teach it on anybody else. There's no, like, so if you're using Katharina, you don't need to teach it on anyone else, so it's kind of like, it's not like Alice's inherit where you really want to put on some other people, like, so there's not a real downside to developing Katharina, and she's just been well positioned in the metagame. She's Earth type, which means she was super good in the second act. And then she also had, like, in the third act, there's a lot of enemies who are Earth type enemies, so she has the Earth type thaumaturgy, which does get her a bit of nice defense there against some certain enemies, like some of the sand enemies and some of the others. There's a lot of, like, just enemies that do, like, Earth type damage, so you get a bonus that way. And like that's so super nice, but probably one of the better abilities here is her Vice of the Skull, which said decrease damage to undead, decrease damage to undead. There was a lot of undead in the third act. You'll see undead just throughout the dungeon, just fall camp running through it. But also, like, even some of the post-game bosses like Graham's Necrocore and even Morgus himself would summon undead, and this ability ended up being more relevant than you might have thought it would have been. So ended up being relevant for the post-game. And probably one of the other abilities she gets is she gets the Secret Art of Laralik. So this is earth damage. It's probably the best of the secret arts because Katharina also, because she has the Vice Skull, she does extra damage to undead with all of this. So it ends up being kind of better than Alice's secret arts because she has the undead bonus already. Doesn't, like I said, whereas Lotus has a undead bonus, but that one scales with piety. This one scales with magic power versus divine power. So it's actually just a better secret art. And of course, secret art said her second class is priest. This allows her, if she's a priest, she can actually still cast this. So long as she's in the center of the back row, she can actually still cast Laralik once per battle. And as a mage, it gives her just a 15% damage bonus to Laralik. If you cast as a mage, this is like Laralik for 15% more damage. So free damage there. Just super, super good kit. No real downside. Her second class priest, so she gets all priest spells. Like, on paper, like, she doesn't seem like nothing stands out. It's just more like just the package of, like, she does what you need her to do. There's no real downside developing her. And like I said, as a standard roster mage, that's pretty much what you want. She's reliable, does everything you need. So I have her third. And this brings us to the fourth one. This is Eldorado. I wanted to put him in his third, because again, he's a knight who can be a dark mage, but the big problem he has is he's good personality, which does not play Thalas or Milan or anything. Like, good is easily the worst alignment for a mage. So being good kind of holds him back a bit because it kind of limits you to what positions you're going to put him in or how you're going to use him. But my gosh, being a knight, he's the only character in the game who could be mage and knight, which means he gets all this cool knight passive, so he can get recovery, which is such a nice ability to have on a mage. Chance to recover one naturally recoverable status affliction at the start of own turn affected by luck. So if he's asleep, if he's confused, if he's charmed, he has a chance of recovering at the beginning of his turn and not lose his turn. A lot of times if your character's like asleep, stunned, or whatever, they will lose their turn, but if he triggers this, he will recover that and not lose his turn. So this is just a super good ability to have on a mage, or really any character, but on a mage is super nice. And like I said, if you're fighting like a boss that uses a bunch of AE status effects and he recovers, he might potentially be able to help cure the status effect on somebody else if you teach him status cure spells. But he also gets Way of the Night naturally. This is a skill that's pretty much a must learn on every mage you got. He has this naturally, which means you don't have to worry about trying to get it, but also means you're going to be able to level it up a lot easier. Same thing with Unyielding Will of Fight, aka Cheat Death. He gets this naturally, which means you don't have to try to have as much trouble trying to learn it on. But of course, passive HP up, passive defense up, passive magic defense up, passive resist up. All those are great abilities to have on a mage. So this is just a great kit here. Knight just gives all these knight passes or just all these skills you want on a mage anyway. And self-healing is also good on a mage because it scales with divine power. And mages, just by virtue of using staves and stuff, and they have really good divine power scaling, they end up, self-healing ends up being a really useful skill on a mage because you can use this to recover without spending MP to do so. So pretty much like just as a knight mage, like all those knight passes are Graze mage, but also he's dark type, which means he learns all the dark type spells you just talked about on a Milana. He also gets that dark type thaumaturgy. And if you want to use him as a knight, dark type thaumaturgy on a knight is amazing, especially for the current post game, but just being a mage, a dark mage who has all the knight passives, good stuff, man. Like said, I mean, if he wasn't good aligned, I probably would have put him at third above you, Kathrine. Like, super good character. And this brings us to the last character on this tier, and which is Elf Mag, which might be a bit controversial, but what makes Elf Mag so good is that, one, she's a dark mage, two, she's neutral, which makes her said she could benefit from Alice's passive. But she could also potentially, if you're using Elise, she has something that's a lot like Milana's passive, but for neutral characters. So if you're using Elise as a fighter or a knight, you could put her right in front of her, and Elf Mag could potentially get that full 21% damage bonus. The other thing that makes her just so good, though, is the fact that because she's Nameless Venture, you get a lot of her dupes, like I said, because dark type elf mage means she already has like the best possible starting IQ, and you can definitely try to, because the high number of copies you get, you can just wait till you have one with ideal stats, get that +1 in IQ to start, and then like good bonus points. Like for this one, we had that said she started that 20 IQ. That shows you what it said, and then I had 8 bonus points, so we had 28 IQ base, and she got pretty good IQ rolls on level up, ended up with a natural of 91, then of course we have 5 more from Marine and 6 more from a bond mate, giving us up to 102 IQ, which just like gets her, like I said, gets you more magic power, a bit more MP, super nice. Like I said, she's a dark mage, gets everything you need, and because of the high number of dupes you get, she's really easy to discipline. Like Nameless Venture, by far the easiest to discipline. She was my first discipline 9 character by a long shot. Even like on a totally free to play account, you will be able to get an Elf Mag to high discipline without too much trouble. Like I do think for like a totally free to play account, Elf Mag might be the best mage you can get, just because of the ease of discipline, which gets you extra SP, gets you extra MP, pretty much gets you X pluses and everything else. Discipline gets you a lot of extra stats, can just make the game a lot easier for your character because you're not going to run out of MP or SP as fast. You're going to have a lot more HP, you're going to have more like speed and just be a stronger character overall. So I just think, like I said, for the same reason, she's just a dark mage. Same reason I think Eldorado and Milana are great. She has all the benefits of a dark mage, and she's super easy to get and easy to discipline. So I think for like a budget character, even just like I said, on my own count, she has my highest IQ. So she just she does what you need to do. Teach her some pre-spells, and she will be an absolutely great character for you. Alright, in a B tier, I also have 4 characters. This time it's Dino, Marianne, Asha, and Jean in that order. So we have Dino at the top of the B tier because one, he's an elf mage who is neutral. He gets air type. Air type is actually pretty decent in the third abyss because, again, a lot of earth type enemies there, so he can do extra damage to them, but also his second type is earth, so he gets earth spells too, which is also pretty good in the second act. So just as a mage, he's pretty decent that way, but also he gets magical bean knowledge, which means he does extra damage to magical beans, takes less damage. Magical beans, you see them all throughout the game. Magical beans are your slime blobs, your cursed quaints, your mimics, the floating sword enemies, the entities and stuff. All those count as magical beans, and you'll see quite a few of those throughout the game, even in the third abyss. Like zones 8 through 10 had quite a few of these kind of enemies, so this is just a really nice passive, in the same way that the undead passive on your Katharine's pretty good and remains relevant. This is one that remains relevant, has remained relevant throughout the game, so just a good passive. So he's just really good package here, and again, he's a neutral mage, like so which means he plays nice with Alice. Can get a bonus from Elise as well, and like I said, he's gonna have pretty decent magic power just from being an elf mage, and like I said, super good. Not too much more to say. His second class is Thief, which is not ideal, but I do put him at the top of the B tier mostly because he's neutral. This was a tough pick because right after him I have Marianne, who is also an Earth Mage. So pretty much everything I say about Earth Mage applies to her, but her downside is she's good personality, which again, being good makes her kind of awkward. I've been using her on my team as well as another good mage. It's been kind of awkward lineup wise. I'm like, oh yeah, good kind of sucks, but she does have a pretty good passive, and that's Frugal Faith, which lets her cast priest spells for like less mana, and she also has a second skin that just lets her cast healing spells for less mana. But generally Frugal Faith I think is better just because it hits a lot more spells, including like Bodios and like a lot of your other spells that you'll be casting frequently, like Call to or whatever. So I think it's a much better passive. But again, she's not a damage passive, so it just kind of forces her, like, to get the most out of you. She's going to be kind of your support mage, which is not bad. Like, getting like that extra mana economy is fine. Her discipline gives her a bit extra MP, but she's a human mage, so her MP is going to be a bit lower, her IQ is going to be a bit lower, and this is the main reason I put her below Dino besides being good. So, but she does learn pre-spells, so getting all those pre-spells easily is a nice bonus on mages. Like, for Dino, you're going to have to use some inherits to get them, where she's going to get them all naturally. Though, fortunately, pre-spells aren't too hard to get. Like I said, it's just most of the key pre-spells are pretty easy to acquire. So, but getting them naturally is always a plus, and Marianne has that. I said I was truly torn on who to put at the top, and I decided to put her below Dino, mostly, like then, for the reason I stated earlier. So, and then the next one I have third is Asha again. I kind of wanted to put her at the bottom here because, again, she's good type. She's also fire. Fire's been kind of a awful element throughout the game. She gets absolutely wrecked in the second abyss because everything's water type. She takes extra damage. Just like I said, terrible in the second act. Third act, she does get some air spells, which can be nice against like some of the enemies in the third act, but fire has just not been a well-positioned element in this game, and that seems like it might change in the next abyss, but that remains to be seen. Based on what we know, it sounds like fire will be super good, but we'll have to see how that pans out. Mostly the only reason she's not on the bottom is, one, she learns pre-spells naturally, and two, she recently got a second type, which actually gives her a better passive, because her default passive is also pretty terrible. She gets the Apothecary's Knowledge, Compassionate Apothecary, increases poison, paralysis, and stone tolerance for herself and all adjacent good allies, which means to even get this, you have to have a second good character even benefit from this, so this is kind of bad. Stone tolerance can be useful, but overall this is a pretty meh passive. Her other passive in her other form, like if you do her, if you change her style, it gives her a better chance of landing debuffs and stuff, which is actually nice. The only downside is that style is ugly as hell. Like, I cannot stand the way that one looks. That one's awful looking. Like, I would not want to have her play with her for looking like that all the time. So I have not been using that style, even though technically it's probably better. I just cannot stand the way she looks like that. Way too creepy for me. But, so I put her third here, like I said, mostly because she gets those healing spells, and second style I think helps her a bit. And then at the bottom of B tier, I have Jean. Jean, he's an Earth Mage, kind of like, he's the only other Earth Mage not named Ekaterina. So he does have that form. His second class is Thief, though, which is kind of meh. And like Ekaterina, he's neutral, so he plays well with Alice. He can play well with Elise, so that's actually fine. And again, he learns all the Earth stuff. that your Katarina would learn. But his passive here, Earth Formation, increases damage to water-type enemies for user and adjacent Earth-type allies for at least 2. This is a freaking terrible passive. I debated putting him lower, like on the C tier, but I kind of have C tier is more of caveat, but like I said, because he does have a decent inherit that you can use him to inherit treasure trap. No, this is his is a disarm one. The treasure trap disarm skill, like you can do that here. What is it? Treasure trap. This one here. You can use him to inherit that skill on your characters and level that up. If whoever you're opening boxes with, you probably want to use some of these to level that up, or maybe just keep using them till it's maxed. So he does have some value as an inherit that can be kind of high. If you want to max out that skill on somebody, it's like 28 copies or something. Like I said, I did max this out on your Katarina eventually, but who is my box opener? So that's the one downside developing this. It means you won't have him for that inherit, but that inherit is not as critical as some of the other inherits, which we will talk about in the C tier. So on C tier, I have 4 characters, and they are Elda, Flute, Yarmil, and Adam. And the reason it's kind of like said they're all on C tier is because, well, C is almost kind of like the quote caveat tier. C for caveat, right? And that's because these characters are all super valuable as inherits. That's really not recommended to develop them specifically. Like, it's just, you could develop them. Like, all these characters are probably fine. Like, Elda, he's a dark mage. He actually has a decent passive, too. He has Darkkin Blessing. This actually be a great passive for the post-game. Reduces dark-type damage for elves in the same row. Like, this is actually really meta. This would be a great passive in the current post-game. But, the problem here is that if you wanted to inherit his skill on somebody, which is something you probably want to do with him, his inherit is one of the best in the entire game. So he has, if we go to Elda, you can use him to inherit follow-up attack. Also full power strike if you get a rare one. Follow-up attack. This is probably the most important inherit for anybody you are not going to be casting spells with. So pretty much anybody who's not a mage or a priest, you're going to want this. All your fighters, your thieves, your samurai, your ninja, they all want to max this skill out as fast as possible. So Elda, you're just going to have to use him for inherits. Like, can't recommend actually develop him because his inherit's way too valuable for that. Like I said, there's other options for dark mage. You have to pass on Elda, even though he would be pretty good in the current meta. You would have to pass up what is a valuable inherit. So I cannot recommend him. And this is same thing true for Flute, who is actually also super good. She's water type, so she gets good. Much like dark type, water also gets just extra IQ based on type. So they'll have good IQ, be great to get a lot of magic power, a lot of extra MP. But so her passive's trash. She has a terrible passive. That's not anything to worry about. But same thing with like Elda, her inherit is way too valuable. In her case, she is the source of Meagle inherits. So if you want to level up Meagle on anybody, you need flutes. And you will need a lot. Like, ideally on a mage, you want to have level 4 skills. Like, so if you're using Alice as your mage, you need at least 9 flute inherits to get this to level 4 on Alice. Same thing with Kathrine. You need 9 flute inherits to get this to level 9. Based on some of the things we heard, you might need to... Meagle might be one of the most important spells in the next bit. So if it's a character who doesn't naturally learn Meagle, though, like a dark mage, or if you use Milani, you need 14 flute inherits to teach Meagle level 4 on Milana. So she ends up just being super valuable that way. And the same thing for Yarmil. Yarmil's the same thing, but with Faru, which is a wind type spell. Again, great source of damage. Like, if you're trying to use a dark mage, you probably want a 14 either Yarmil's or 14 flute just to give them a level 4 skill, because getting Zealous level 4 is super hard. So, but it's absolutely worth it. Everything dark type mages bring, it makes it worth putting up this restriction. But leveling up Faru or Meagle to level 4 is such a critical part of the mage game that you just cannot... Flutes, you can't develop. Yarmil, you can't develop for the same reason. Yarmil's passive. I don't think he has a good passive either. Air Formation pretty much is just trashes Flute's passive. I mean, Flute does have a really good discipline too. Like, on paper, Flute's probably the best mage, but she gets MP and magic power too, which is like pretty much exactly what you want for discipline on a mage. But like I said, because her inherit's way too important, you just cannot develop her, which is too bad because I do like Flute as a character, but like I said, inherit's just way too valuable. This brings us to Adam. Well, Adam has another problem that he's light type. Like, light is kind of bad in the current meta because it means taking extra damage from the post-game bosses. You'll take 30 to 60% extra damage from like the Sill Demon and Morgus. So being light kind of sucks, but he casts mage spells for less mana, at least low level ones. Like, the only problem with this one is, unlike Marianne's, where it's kind of always useful, a lot of the mage spells you'll be casting with this do not benefit because they cost too much mana. You cannot use this for law spells. You can't use this for level 4 Feru or Meagle. You can't use this for pretty much the only thing you'll be using this for is like level 1 line spells, like level 1 Mopharos or whatever. But if you wanted to use like level 3 line spells, this won't help you either. So this one's not that great. It's not nearly as good as Marianne's cost reduction passive. However, his inheritable skill, this is the best inheriting game. Like, Adam being able to learn it naturally does give him a bonus. He takes less damage from it. He also activates a bit more as Adam, but even on other characters, this skill is so good. Also has a nice has a dampening of damage from types user disadvantage against scene. Has like a damage bonus scene on it too, which is kind of nice. But that's more of a nice have. The main reason you want this is for the damage reduction, and this skill is so important that you pretty much want to max this skill out on everybody. You want level 6 on everybody. Level 6 Wizardry Truth on everybody, which means 12 Adam dupes per character. Like, yeah, that means if you want a full party with max Wizardry Truth, that is 72 Adam dupes. So Adam is just so valuable as a inherit that you can't really develop him on his own. Like, and being light time kind of sucks at third best, but he does make up for it by having Wizardry Truth. But on the other hand, you want to put that on everybody else. He does have a secret art, which is the light-based secret art, but much like Kathrine, second class is a priest, and he can use this as, like I said, he can use this as a priest in the center back row. But I'd say, like I said, it doesn't get damage bonus to undead or anything, so I feel like it's the worst of the secret arts because he's already light type, so it doesn't really let him do much more other than lets him cast Lawfaros for an extra 15% damage if he's a mage, or lets him cast Lawfaros as a priest. Kind of nice, but priests, like I said, Badios is a light spell, so being light's kind of meh. It's like where dark's really good. Right now, light type kind of sucks, and said he's more useful as an inherit. Before I get down into F tier, I want to briefly talk about the limited time legendary mage characters. There's just 4 of them right now, and they are Shelly Rionic, Erwin, Earmus, and Birkanon. I'm not including them in the proper tier list because 3 of these characters are not currently available. These are all limited time availability. The only character currently available right now is Erwin, but depending on when you watch this video, he might not be available either. So I don't want to put like a ranking on these characters because, like I said, it might not be that useful to whoever's watching this, but also I don't think, like I said, I think a lot of people make the mistake, especially newer players, thinking that you have to have these limited time legendaries. It really, the difference in power between like a limited time legendary and like a nameless adventure just isn't big enough to justify shelling out a bunch of extra casts for a limited character. Like, standard roster characters, really everything you need, but also even from a legendary mage perspective, Alice is a better legendary mage than any of these characters. Like, Erwin has some interesting abilities that make him good versus bosses. Shelly Rionic has some good abilities that make her good for, like, farming certain areas or just traveling through dungeons. Earmus and Birkanon have certain, like said, specialties. Like, Birkanon's probably one of the best picks for, like, a frontline mage if you want to, because she's kind of tanky. Earmus will probably eventually get a samurai class change, but it hasn't happened yet. But it's hard to, like, rank these characters when they're just not that available. But also, I don't think they're really worth it. Like I said, the other issue with limited time legendaries is that because like Alice is better, Adam has probably the best inherit in the game. Deborah has a good inherit. Like Katarina is not bad. Lanavel and Geralt are all solid characters. Like when you're doing the pulling on the limited legendary banners, their chances of actually pulling the main 6 legendaries drops on their banners. Normally, when you're pulling on a like said, wrong. When you go to the bones, limited time. Actually, no, you go to rare.
What do you seek?
Because normally when you pull on an adventurous remains, you have like an 0.83% chance of getting like an Alice or Adam, like a 1 in 120. 1 out of 120 chance of getting characters like that, which is not bad. But if you pull on like one of these limited time legendary banners, your chance drops quite a lot. So if we go, where's Irwin's Bone? If I go to like Irwin's Bone, like the chance, he has a 2% chance dropping, but this cuts into the chance there. So Alice and Adam stuff, they go to just a 0.5% chance, or 1 out of 2, or almost half of what their normal chance is. So it ends up just kind of feeling bad. So you end up with a character who has yet to prove himself, and you hurt your chances for like the main 6. So it ends up feeling bad. So I'm not really a big fan of pulling those. Or those characters. The main reason to pull on those banners is that when you get to the exchange, like every one of those banners, if you get to 60 points, you can trade for Legendary Adventures remains, which will always get you one of the main 6. So you have a 1 in 6 chance of an Alice, 1 in 6 chance of Adam, 1 in 6 chance of Deborah, 1 in 6 chance of Kathrine. And these are all great characters. All these are very usable characters. These 6 legendaries are better than most of the limited ones. So yeah, I'm going to level all the limited time legendaries as well only. Like said, Shelly Rionic, I will make a note that her inherit is really good. Like if you get her, you should probably use her for inherits. Like at least that is a skill at the very least you should have on the main character. So you might want to try to get just 1 copy for the main character. A lot like Adam in that you should be using her for inherits on your other characters. Don't recommend developing her though, because I mean, if you want Dark Mage, Milana's one way easier to get. Actually has a passive that's pretty much always useful and not just some of the time. And yeah, Milana's inherits kind of meh. So I do think that's just a better way to go. So yeah, so that covers that. As I said, these guys I wouldn't recommend unless you want to spend money on the game. Alright, and then finally, here we are at the very bottom of the list. I have just two characters here, and that is Emil and Memento Core. So let's talk about Emil. So he is a priest. He's a light priest. He's good aligned. He's light type. So yeah, so wrong alignment, the worst alignment, but also being light is the worst element. His passive is trash, like in Blessing. It's a light version of Elda's passive, but unlike Elda, this one's worthless. This passive is absolutely worthless because light type damage just is nothing in the game. Literally, the only place this is even relevant is in the Den of Light, which is, well, that's just not a place where you need to worry about this kind of stuff. So, completely worthless passive. He's light type, so he takes like 30 to 60% extra damage from like your post-game bosses. And of course, he doesn't learn any other spells, just learns light spells. As I said, he does get the priest spells, which is nice, but being light type kind of sucks. But also his inherit is Madios. If you want to level up Madios, this is your guy. And Madios is an AE healing spell, one of the best spells in the game. Like, you are going to be using this a lot on all of your spellcasters. You want to teach a spell to all your mages, and you want to level it up probably to level 3 on all your mages. So this makes Emil a very important inherit. Like, you know, it just said, so you can't really... It's hard to recommend developing, but because he's light type, because he's good, like, there's just so many themes working against him. And if you want a mage that can learn priest spells, literally, there's like 6 other options that are just better. Like, do not develop Emil. Use him for Madios inherits. Like I said, I have him on F tier. He is just not worth developing. And the last one on this list is Memento Core, the main character. Not to say he's a bad character, however, he makes a bad mage. There is one issue with making him a mage. So mages are the squishiest character in the game. And Memento Core, because he's the main character, if he dies, it's instantly a game over. So having him as a squishy mage is not a very good way to try to tackle the post-game or other tough content, because you're going to get a lot more game overs. And yeah, and if you want to make him a spellcaster, just make him a priest. He could be any class in the game, so you can make him a priest, won't be quite as good of magic attack spells, but he'll be decent as a healer. He could do all your support stuff he needs, mage. Teach him like level 4 Feru or level 4 Meagle. He'll be able to do some decent damage. So the other problem though is he's untyped, so he doesn't even get good spells. He only gets so his actual mage spells, he gets Conus, Maconus, and Laconus, which are untyped spells, which are pretty much the worst like line of mage spells. So he doesn't even get elemental ones. So yeah, and so it just really, yeah, there's just a lot of the reasons I do not recommend him as a mage. If you want a spellcaster, make him a priest. Or in my 5 mage line, I have everybody else a mage. I usually have him as a knight, because sometimes you need things like knight's defense. And, well, knight's like the tankiest class in the game, so he's the least likely to die as a knight, so... Just helps keep him alive, and, yeah, have a lot of fights to go against, like, some of the post-game boss, like against Morgus or whatever. They're going great, then the main character dies in a otherwise good run, ends prematurely, so, yeah, like, just mage is, unfortunately, just not really viable as a mage because of the way the game is run maybe outside a certain farming situation. You can make a mage when you're farming or whatever, but it's not workable for like post-game bosses. So yeah, that's the tier list. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I'll probably revisit this in the future. I want to do this now before the 4th Abyss opens up, so we kind of have a baseline on where some of these are now, and my thoughts on these will probably change by the time we get to the end of the 4th Abyss, because then we see the new content, we see like what's actually good, right? Maybe Dark Mages won't be as great anymore. Maybe Earth Mage like Kathrine will go down some pecs because everything does wind damage, and she becomes less viable because she dies a lot. Maybe Fire Mage like Asha become a lot more valuable because everything takes the extra damage versus fire. Like, right, those are things like Asha. I've not been too impressed with Asha so far. I've been using Asha for a while. I am not too impressed with her, but her value might go up quite a bit in the next Abyss. That remains to be seen. So I want this here now, so I kind of know where I feel about where things are right now. And I might revisit this in a few months once we get past the post game of the next Abyss. Whenever that happens to be, it might take me a few months. I don't, like I said, we said it's supposed to drop probably around Christmas time. It's next month sometime. I don't know the exact date. A lot of people are predicting it's gonna be for the Xmas event update though, in the middle of December. So guess we'll go to cross that bridge when it happens, but it'll probably take me a couple months to actually complete the Abyss, beat the post game and all that. So yeah, when we cross that bridge, I'd like to revisit this. Anyway, not too much more to say on this one. I did do a video recently about Irwin. I did a deep dive about his skills. If you want to see that video, check it out down below. As always, thank you for watching.